Hey, welcome back, everybody, to ThinkScript. My name is Mike Fairborn. A pleasure to be with you all. Folks, looking today at the markets and seeing some general moves across different areas. We've seen some strength in the market. Something that we'd be able to pick up on today with an indicator we're going to be taking a look at, where it's kind of a scenario within the MACD we're going to be looking at, which is that important area of expansion, also known as MACD acceleration, where oftentimes you get the expansion between the two lines. There could be some interesting moves that take place when that occurs. So we're going to be looking at scripting for that today. Really looking forward to it. It's one I've been thinking about for a while, and it finally clicked. I'm like, hey, we've got to do this one because oftentimes, those that do use the MACD are looking for that momentum acceleration. Yeah, it can be helpful in a number of situations. We'll take a look at those and see how that looks. But welcome to all of you today. Journey, we've got Ray and others here. Kevin, we've got David Kelly, Ray, and others. Oh, I'm joined in the chat by a friend and colleague of mine, Cameron May. Wasn't sure who it was going to be helping out in the chat today, but I appreciate that, you guys, for Cameron being here. Help me out. He's helped me out a lot this week. Helped me out a couple times yesterday as well. So thank you so much for your help in the chat, Cam. You can follow us on X, Cameron May CS, Mike Fairborn CS. You've got to spell those correctly if you want to find the right person. We do have a few different stragglers, imposters out there that do change the name a little bit, and you'll find them if the name's not exactly correct. CS at the end, by the way, is just for Charles Schwab. So there we go. Welcome to you. Those of you that are just joining us as well, we got James, John, Scott, and Will, and Joe. All right, everybody. Well, let's dive into some disclosures so we can get into some coding here. All right, information here is for general information purposes only. Now, the Peanut software application is for educational purposes only. Backtesting, which we will look at in this class frequently as we look at different indicators. Those results presented are hypothetical. There is no guarantee that the same strategy implemented today would produce similar results. Now, investing involves, for some products, involves risk, including for some products more than your initial investment. Past performance of any security strategy does not guarantee future results or success. And as you can see, we do have some futures listed here. We will look at futures from time to time. It's really great to see those because they do offer volume that we can look at too. Let's just say, for example, S&P 500, the E-mini futures contract on the S&P 500. So, for example, we might look at that. But wanted to highlight that there for you. And just a quick note, there are some steps I'll just show briefly here to show you for ThinkScripting. We start with the goal. Can that goal be met? Many times we do use an indicator to help us with that because it gets us pretty far down the path sometimes of what we're actually looking to do. Today, that's going to be momentum and really an acceleration of momentum over a series of at least 3 days. We want to see some serious expansion occurring. All right, is what we've discussed. Now, I'll show you the custom script. Of course, what we'll always do is we'll share that at the end as well. So you do have that, not necessarily at the end. We'll get it early enough in there so you guys can start utilizing it. But let's take a look at our general markets here. Pull those up right now, and there we go. Drag, come on, there we go. All right, so looking at the markets here, S&P 500 index, I am looking at a weekly chart. You can see the extension of that weekly breaking into new highs over an extended time frame. And really kind of, for the past little while here, we've been holding into this upper zone, which is quite interesting. That's an all-time new high range, of course. Many of you are very familiar with that. I'm gonna go back to go this way, oh, it's showing us a weekly there. I'm sorry about that. I must have been using the weekly. There we go. Into just our daily chart. Oftentimes, we're looking at the markets and we want to see, maybe we'll be looking potentially at a ThinkScript that's going to tie into one that's maybe a little bit more bullish, one that ties into the general direction of the market. In other words, what is the trend of the market? We can see the trend, higher highs and higher lows. That was just really last week, an all-time new high, right? And we're still hovering in that range. Sometimes August tends to be a little bit choppy, seasonally speaking. It might make a high, it might make a new low. We don't know what it'll do, but sometimes it does tend to go flat, can go flat on average, and then it can go down as well, just using like a seasonal chart. 5, 10, 15, 20 year, we'll often see that as kind of the average kind of a move here out there. Okay, well, I wanted to do this. There are some momentum indicators. Let me just highlight this too. This is a great way to find those momentum indicators right off of Thinkorswim. Let's the Thinkorswim platform over here on the right hand side. If you guys have seen this, now there is this approach too. Click down the dropper icon. We can get all of, in alphabetical order, all of our indicators. My gosh, and there's a lot of them. There's plenty in there. I got a few shared ones at the bottom as well. But there you go. There's tons of those over there. But if you want to look at different categories, you know, momentum being one, you can come over here and look at a quick study set. Now you can see up here momentum studies, and what might be in those momentum studies? Well, there's quite a few actually. Oh, well, at the bottom here, you can see one that does stick out is the MACD2 line. Now there is the MACD, there's the MACD histogram, and there's the MACD2 line. I talked a bit about that, well, in detail this week in my swing trading class that's on Tuesdays. We went into detail on that, but I wanted to try to devise maybe a code that we can find exactly what we were looking for in that swing trade class to kind of help us find those scenarios. Because what ultimately we looked at, and by the way, there are some others in here, you'll notice too, RSI, momentum indicator. I've got two momentum indicators I'm looking at right here. Now, oftentimes you can see those moves, and you can see sometimes when there is that crossover. Let's find one off the bottom here. And you can see one pretty clearly here, an expansion occurring right here. Now, there is a crossover here. Do you see that? Let's really widen this up, and I'm actually going to do this just for the sake of us being able to see this. Let's just go ahead and kill that RSI because we are going to be talking about the MACD2 line specifically. Ah, much better, much better. Do you see down here, one of the ways that is utilized, that traders will utilize to look at the MACD is that crossover line right there. That essentially is what's happening at that case in time, at that point. The 12 MACD, exponential MACD, there's a 12 and the 26. These are both exponential lines. The 12 is crossing above the 26. Now, this is a form, and I talk about this in that class in detail. In fact, just while I'm at it, let me just quickly share that link so you have it in case anybody does want to take a look at it. This is just right from our playlist. You can get our playlist right over here, just off our Trader Talks page, just in the playlist right here. Moving into that MACD, as you can see right over here up top, we talked about it this week. I'm going to go ahead and just click on this link right here. I'll copy that address if you want to get the full breakdown of what's going on behind the scenes there. I'd want you to have that. Many of you have seen that already, but for those of you that have seen it, what we've done is we've devised a code today to help us find exactly what we were looking for. Okay, and that is this. The 12, 26, the 12 crossing above the 26, these are exponential moving averages. And when we're looking at exponential moving averages and a crossover, it's a signal amplifier or amplification of the internal price movement. And that is what we're looking at here. It's the convergence, C, or divergence, D, of the MA, I just spelled it out, MACD, the moving average convergence, divergence. These two lines converging or diverging on the chart. Let's just pull it up so we have a quick visual. This won't take but a moment, but for those of you that hadn't seen that class, I just want to give you a brief overview. You can get certainly more from the class, but let's see. Oh, sorry, 12, 26. Yeah, we'll hit more details, but just a quick one so we're all on the same page here. 26, let's just change these colors up a little bit. Heck, I'll even make that a little bit wider so you can see it. Now, what's happening here? We've got the 12 and the 26 moving averages coming on our indication here. Exponential 12, exponential 26, convergence and divergence. Now, what we're looking at, what is the fast-moving line here? The fast-moving line would be our blue line. Now, notice over here, when these lines start to get a little bit closer, closer, there's a convergence of the lines, and ultimately what happens is they begin to diverge. Now, how quickly they do diverge, what will happen, that can affect your main line MACD down here. This yellow line is just simply an average of the price range or the movement of these two lines converging and diverging. So it is kind of a fascinating sort of an indicator. Divergences can be looked at as well, just line divergences, for example. Is the line itself making a higher low and a higher high? But what is interesting is somehow, in some cases, that signal line, which is a very, very quick line, it's that 9-period exponential moving average. When that crosses, or I should say when the MACD main line crosses above that line, it can be interesting, especially if there is an expansion between these two lines. And that's exactly what we talked about earlier this week. Do you see the expansion happening here, this distance? It tells us that prices are doing something quite different, quite unique than what they were doing previously. And that's the signal behind the scenes of the way that MACD is trying to tell us about extra potential momentum out there. Now, notice the difference here in terms of the expansion between these two. It's getting greater and it's getting greater. And that acceleration, known as also the MACD acceleration or MACD expansion, that's what we're looking for between the signal line and where we're at right there. We're not simply just looking at a crossover. Do you see the crossover right there? You can see a crossover, but oftentimes the way traders will look at this is the real indication that they're focused in on is the MACD itself. So not just simply a casual kind of a crossover, but MACD bullish momentum building. We're looking at that expansion growing for at least, the way I've looked at it here, and you'll be able to adjust this, but folks, we're looking at basically I'll get a little delay there on my lines, a 3-day move, so 3 days in a row. Spot that for us on a major index, S&P 500, NASDAQ, you name it, we want to see it. Now, this was on the S&P 500, but you can see the extent of sometimes what can happen, just indications. It doesn't mean it's going to go up in price, but it says there is something going on behind the scenes with this convergence and divergence that may or may not make a difference. But this is why traders look at it, because they say, well, maybe I'm getting a higher high over here too, or whatever the case is. Maybe it's time for prices to get moving a little bit. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over here and show you. These were some of the trades we put on in that class. We did look at, a few of these. And I wanted to show you what some of these will look like as prices are going higher. For example, PLTR, Palantir. Now, here is an acceleration move right there. Can you see the expansion taking place? Now, I realize Palantir has gone up substantially here. I can see that, guys, as well. I mean, I know that that's the case, right? Clearly, we see an expansion type move. But that is what we're focused in on, is the acceleration between these two lines, not simply just a crossover like you might have seen here. There was a shorter term crossover here, but we didn't see the kind of internal strength in terms of that price movement building. We did not have a 3-day move there. It did not occur. Okay, so there were no 3 days in that range. What we're looking at is we actually had one here and we had another one here. Now we're looking at it in hindsight. If we would have run through our scan, we could have picked up on this quite early in the move. Now I realize this was also tied to earnings. This one was not, however. Okay, Palantir was not tied to an earnings event over here. That is the situation we're seeking out right there. Let's throw out some other ones here. Costco. How did I find these quickly? Well, we've got a scan to kind of help us out to do that. Acceleration. We're seeing something very, very similar to right over here. This is one reason why MACD is somewhat popular. We're trying to see if it's moving, or is there going to be a signal line or a divergence with in the same direction that prices are moving. We see price strength, and then can we also confirm that with internal MACD strength? Look over here with me. There was a short-term crossover. We didn't get it, but we actually started to get this early on. Expansion, expansion, expansion. That would have hit right there. 3 days. Now, you notice something different about this move too. And I picked up on this by reading, this is what it reminded me of. I'd read some old books years and years ago that talked about just, for the size, or for a potential move beginning, what do the size of those bars look like? Do they look like anything we'd seen previously, at least on the upside? Look over here with me. Do you see anything like this? Right there. The size of the bars relative to this. I'm talking about green bars in this case. We had one here. That was kind of a one-off, but there was one there. You kind of need maybe 2 or 3 because we're looking at a 3-day expansion. But that's what this acceleration picks up on. There's a change in the value, the size of the range of those bars. And that can be an indication that maybe something's a little bit different here. This is always useful, folks. We don't want to forget anything else we've been looking at. It's always useful to look at the trend itself. What has been the longer term trend of a stock like Costco? Well, it's been on the uptick, hasn't it? Pretty clearly there. That's been a pretty good run. Long-term trend, is it up? It doesn't have to be a 10-year weekly. I mean, shoot, it can be a 3-year weekly. Just zoomed in on it there. It could be a 1-year, a daily chart, or a 2-year daily chart. What's that long-term trend? And is this pullback we're looking at giving us some additional signs that it might be ready to start trending higher? That's kind of what we're talking about here with that MACD. But is it in accordance with a longer-term structure? Okay, that's kind of what we're reviewing there. Okay, so you see the size of the move, and it's interesting because the size of the move continued. The bigger bars kind of stayed. Well, let's kind of really just inspect this even in more detail here so I can show you how we got this. Because let's be honest, that was a very, very long time. If somebody was looking at a MACD signal, I mean, it dipped down here, but it only started to come back up here. That's a little bit of time. I mean, that's pretty much the month of August. June, July, and now we're getting something here in August. Now, is it a guarantee it's going to go higher? No, but we're seeing some sort of, I don't want to say frenzy buying, but there's just a lot more price activity pushing prices up. MACD is giving us that confirmation. Do you see the expansion there? It's the widening out. Go back and take a look. Some of the bigger moves you'll find out there are going to be expansions. In this case, to the downside, look at it widening. It's really accelerating. You're seeing prices just really hit kind of a frenzy selling, selling down here too. This is an area you want to be incredibly cautious. In that swing trading class, what we talked about is in some cases waiting for the initial move and then the flag pattern. And what that class was all about was taking the flag pattern right there. We were confirming something like this happening right there with the flag pattern, right at the end of the flag, what we perceive to be the flag pattern. And so you're building not only with the trend, you're building with the price pattern, and then you're trying to get in there some indications from the MACD as well that, yeah, we're seeing real acceleration in price, and maybe perhaps we will see the pull of the flag extend up higher, right, to get to our T2 target, which is really kind of a key point that a lot of swing traders will look at, which, by the way, if I were to look at this right now, I just drew it out to that high. I don't know if that'll happen, but heck, I've been looking at so many of those that kind of have sort of a symmetry to them. It's interesting. But there you go. But how did I find this one? Well, what I did is I went over here and I pulled it up in my scan tab. Okay, because we do have that. I did build it up here for us. And let me show it to you right now. Oh, come on. Oh, I got the MACD 2-line divergence. MACD expansion right there. Boom. Scanning in the NASDAQ 100. How did I find these? And quickly, folks, I've got the control. I've got it right here for you. So I'll pull it up. Let's just look at a couple of them though real quick. We actually have, So we have EA. I didn't look at EA yet, or Axon, or Dash. Let's look at those up top here too. So Axon, AXON. Remember the acceleration between the two lines over a 1, 2, 3 day basis. There you go. 3 day. Okay. So what do you think on Axon? Axon Enterprises. What on earth? Let's see. Hang on. Axon Enterprises. These guys do sell conducted energy devices under the Taser brand. Taser. Oh, probably Taser. Tasers is what they are. All right. Somebody's buying tasers. Hopefully it's just yeah. Somebody in law enforcement. Anyways, let's look at this breakout over here. So it had earnings, but then you can see it. So was earnings significant? It's interesting. We're using MACD as the possibility of a break here. Higher. Look over here. Did we get an acceleration early in this move? Why would that have been interesting there? Well, we did make a new high, and after we saw that acceleration, we got a higher low right there. Now, if I look at these bars are bigger. These are bigger bars, and we did make a high right there. That's a high. So just looking at those price internals, we get to kind of look behind the scenes here with this scan, this coding, this ThinkScript coding, and really kind of try to get a sense of what's going on. Now, notice over here too, it can keep you in a trend. We came down, we didn't cross below the signal line. That could have been a potential exit. Right there again, possible exit. We didn't. Where's the exit? Well, the exit's right there. Do you guys like an exit like that? Somewhere over here. It didn't hit the high. You wouldn't have to use that. I'm just saying that that could also be used. Look on the flip side over here. This is interesting because we're just pulling this right off the scan right now. Look at this. Touched off it. It said, no, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Okay. Right there, you're getting an indication. Now, did it have to be earnings? No. If price action would have moved up enough, it probably would have signaled that MACD expansion or acceleration. Could have seen it. Okay. But that is what we're looking at here. What were some of those others, just real quick? Let's do it. It was EA was one, and what was the other one? EA. There's only, so on the NASDAQ 100, we only have 7. So it's a very, very small percent. I guess, what, 7% roughly, if we're looking at 100 in here. Dash and EA. That's right, Dash. DoorDash. Okay. Acceleration. Ooh, you got an early one over here too. Right there. Even though it's just an indicator, you're getting something close to a breakout range. Interesting, you know. Right over here again, it did dip below. You had earnings that dipped, but then it came back and kind of spiked over here too and said, hey, according to MACD, could be a stronger run. It continued higher, and you got your acceleration noted about right there. You got it ahead of earnings. Oh, gosh. That's my mouse sliding off the pad right there. So even though it broke higher, you're saying, and what could this mean? It could mean there's buying ahead of earnings. Now, I've seen that work two ways. I've seen it go down. Sometimes you buy into earnings if it looks strong, and basically bad news, I don't know. Everybody was buying for the wrong reason, but it goes down. But that's a big day, and you're seeing even more volume today. So could this be one to maybe look at if it were to come up top, maybe consolidate into a flag and go up higher? Well, some would say it's building a good volume base. We've talked about volume before. We don't want to forget about that. But let's do this. Let's go over here and look at the other one, which is EA. Now, okay, so we're getting some of the gaming stocks. EA right there. Okay. It's got longer term resistance. I just noted that. So that's something to be mindful of. I mean, maybe, sometimes you find resistance up at these tops, but it is also having that acceleration right there. Okay. Not a lot of, let me put it this way. Not a lot of divergence off that MACD at all. Notice the MACD line, the blue line, flat, folks, flat, flat, but prices are going higher. So it's actually saying there's some strength, but not too much strength. And guess what? Even though we're just looking at other signals here, volume's not too great too. My guess is it's probably related to that high. something like that. All right. The MACD histogram signal seems easier to follow. Oh, well, it's got something more to it, RG. The histogram will show you that movement up and down. But these two lines, so this is just referred to as the value line or the main line MACD, which is just simply the convergence and divergence. Let me throw that on there because I think it's an interesting point. A lot of traders will use that, and it could be on the charts too, just to reference it. But that can show you the convergence and the divergence occurring. Notice, we talked about this previously. We'd said, are these lines getting closer or further apart? Well, it seems like right there, that might be the widest range. Do you see how the histogram actually shows that for us? You could line it up like this. Have the MACD up top and the histogram right below. You see, you could have it set up that way. And then what you could do is, notice when you want to see when it starts to converge, right there. To RG's point, that is easier to see than me trying to kind of eyeball it and say, is it getting closer, closer? Sure, I could say it's getting closer here, but the convergence, the histogram showed it pretty quickly. So I think that's a good catch there. Pretty interesting. Let's pull up the code right now. All right, let me just, and in fact, I'll just share it first. We'll get into it. Oh, let me just share it over here quickly. There we go. Share, I'll put this right into the chat. And by the way, just as a quick note, these things scripts aren't guaranteed for timeliness or accuracy, but as long as the data that's coming into the platform is good, and it's, in my experience, we've got great data coming through, but I'm just saying if it's off, then of course the think script would be off as well, right? So just keep that in mind as well as just, yeah. All right, there you go. So let's look at it. Let's pull it up and let's talk through, because I think there's some interesting things here that you guys could utilize for other indications as well, other indicators that you might be looking at. So first up, I simply stole the MACD code, which is exactly what the MACD is. I just borrowed it, really, right? That's the indicator itself. I'm using the default. Now, the other MACD, you might see some traders use a quicker one. It's referred to as the 817. Still got the 9 in there, but that's much, much quicker. This is one we just kind of use as a default. I've always sort of used this one, known as the expansion or the acceleration. If you come down here and take a look at it, all borrowed. That is the MACD. Okay, so I just took the MACD. ThinkScript recognizes it, knows exactly what it is. Now, this is the key point, though, that I wanted to look at. The expansion difference. This is how we determine the difference between the mainline MACD, right, what it's doing, and the signal line, which is kind of the moving average that goes up with it. We have to create a difference between the two. So you've got the MACD value. First of all, what we did is we just simply defined the name of it. We just called it expansion because that's exactly what it is. It is an expansion. And you can see over here, MACD value, the main line, less the signal line. Now we just state, since we have that in place, we reference the expansion. Now, I did define what acceleration up means. And acceleration up is the expansion for 3 days in a row. In other words, we have it growing. It's greater than the prior 3 days. In other words, for 3 days in a row, we're moving up. Okay, so signal line, or yeah, I should say, yeah, MACD line greater than the signal line, right there. That's the initial crossover. We can get a number of fake outs there. It's the expansion we really wanted. And we just said expansion greater than expansion of 1 bar ago, 1 bar, 2 bars, 2 prior bars, going back, I should say. Yeah, so does it keep growing into the future? 2 greater than 3 back. If it does meet all those, then acceleration is up, and that's when we plot it. Okay, it reaches the scan, and we throw that in. So it's really super basic, isn't it? Once you break it down, you can make these so simple. You guys remember my early ones that I did? They were just so long and just clunky. It seemed like they even took longer to run. This one's just instant. That's the S&P, the NASDAQ 100. Let's go to the quickly again. So we're in the scan tab. We're in the stock hacker here. Let's go into see what we've got in anything else. Just for the heck of it, do we have anything? There are a few industrials in here. And, oh, you know what's fun is S&P's a lot bigger. So choose a group that has seen some strength on a sector basis. And what I want to do down here is just take a look at, those companies that might be benefiting from what seems to be bigger and bigger tariff numbers coming into the U.S., paid into the U.S. We'll see, though, how that all unfolds. Who knows? But here are the industrials right there. But this group, this sector within the S&P has been quite strong. If we want to just look at sectors, we could do that right there. Oh, we have a few AXON was one of them. Look at that. So that was actually within that group. LDOS was another one. And you've got some too. So if you want to find sector strength, let's say if it was tied into some macro trend, and maybe that macro trend is a tariff trend, what's moving in prices? Perhaps, if it is a tariff trend, we don't know, but you could look into more details and see what's actually moving. Now, let's just do this for fun. We'll just pull this up. Obviously, if we got 8 of these, that's more than we got even in the NASDAQ 100. So some of these are kind of moving a little bit quicker. Maybe, so AXON, let's look at what else we have. CMI, so Cummins Engines. They make big engines for construction equipment. Think about construction equipment. Think about building in the U.S. Think about, I'm just tying it all, linking it maybe to potential more growth from those tariffs here. Oh, there is CMI right there. Okay, just barely getting it. Yeah, so fairly soon. Of course, it wasn't earnings related. And what do you see on Cummins? Just on the fly here, just looking at it right off the cuff. You can see the acceleration. Actually, you've got the acceleration right there in the histogram. Anything interesting about Cummins right now? What is it testing? Tariff related. Could it be ready to take out this long high that was from last year? I always like to just do this. Quickly just take it over on the chart and just see what that weekly looks like. Oh, okay. So it's been a longer term weekly. The last time we broke the longer term range, it ran up for a little bit, kind of tested it and ran again. The last time it broke a weekly range, it really broke up and just ran higher. Interesting. Spotted it really super fast right there. So hopefully you guys, this will help you really find that acceleration in the MACD. That's been the whole entire goal of this whole week, really, is to try to find that expansion. I started that early on, though, with the swing trade class. Now, let's go back to our scan tab, and I wanted to do this. How many are we getting in total in the S&P 500? Watch how quick this is. It looks through all those expansion of the MACD for the last 3 days that fast. Why is it operating so efficiently? One of the reasons is that ThinkScript can move that quick is we're using an indicator. We decided to build it off an indicator. It recognizes extremely fast and knows exactly what it's doing. And it went through 500 whatever companies are in there that quick. And you've got 57. Oh, we got EA right at the top. Look at some of these. I've added in here the sub industry too. So you maybe make some reference points as to what's going on. But this can help you really do a quick deeper dive. Folks, this is all about MOM, momentum, short for, utilized on the platform many times, short for momentum. Not just your average kind of move, but the gap, the difference between the main line and the average line growing for 3 straight bars. Now, if you run something like this every day, you'd be able to see the 3 straight bars coming up, right? I mean, everything would be kind of new. We've got some in here that we don't see yet, but they've been for 2 straight days. Does that make sense? They'll be showing up tomorrow if they have another day. If one of these guys drops off, well, it's possible that momentum has also dropped off. But this is really momentum. And really what kind of gave me the idea for this too is over here, looking at the market again, just a quick note, SPX. Looking at the S&P 500 index, if we have a sideways range here, it might be difficult to fight the market if it's not going up. So looking for the strongest stocks could be helpful. They have to still run, of course, with the MACD, but at least you're maybe taking a next step and looking for maybe some of the strongest momentum out there, right, to help us along the way. All right, and I can see Cam is helping us out with some questions. Thank you, Cam, for that. Oh, let's think. I think he's all caught up. Fantastic. You guys, what other questions might you have about our discussion here? You got the script, right? So the script was sent out. I'll send it out again just to make sure you've got it. So this is the MACD expansion, which is definitely a unique aspect of the MACD. You don't see it too often. It's got to be 3 days too. It's also known as acceleration script. And I hope you find this helpful. Right now, for those of you that are watching this presentation, I always put the script itself in the description section as well. So you have that listed down there for you. But we looked at the MACD a few different ways. You'll find actually two. If I can, let's just pull it up. I can pull that up fairly quickly. I'll just go back over here. We did do a MACD discussion. It was basically divergence and the signal crossover, but it really didn't get into the strength of it when we were looking at the Think script. In fact, if I could just pull that up right now, there it is. Oh, Ben Watson helped me out last week. Thank you, Ben. All right, there it is. And so you've got these, and you can come down here. There it is. So there's this one here. If you're interested, it's the enhanced Think script spot multiple MACD setups, and basically you're looking at divergences, and that would be simply the MACD main line making higher highs and higher lows, but yet prices are still going sideways. That might be another one that could be added to a group like this. Yeah. So just some thoughts there as we break this down for you folks. Yeah, so what it is, so yeah, for those of you just joining us here, in fact, I could just point one out. Let's use one that we talked about earlier. So here is the Costco or PLG. This came up off the scan. What we're looking for is an expansion over here of the last 3 bars. In fact, we're getting it right here, as you can see, utilizing that histogram. Okay, right there, that came up. And what it is the expansion is when those 2 lines begin to really, we're referring to this expansion, the range between the two. And what that is the 12-period exponential moving average. The 12 is breaking faster above, if I can draw this, above the 26, okay? That's it. This is the expansion. We're just saying, hey, give us that expansion. But a simple break above here, like this right there, that is an expansion, but it didn't go for 3 days. So I wanted to give you another visual explanation of that. That is momentum. That is momentum through the MACD. I just brought bullish in Lola. That's something I can absolutely do. In fact, you guys, if that is of use to you, let me work on that. I can definitely have something like that, Lola, next week. Yeah, we can add to it. All you have to do is just change it, and it would be, we want to define. We already know what the difference is, but we're looking at acceleration, what we'd call as acceleration down, and then we'd be looking at that expansion to be occurring, right? Changing the difference between the two. In other words, it's going to be the difference between the signal line and the MACD line. In other words, the MACD line, the main line, is going to be dropping below that signal line. But you could play with that and get it to work out. But that's something I could do. Sorry, we're just about out of time here, but that's the one thing I wanted to highlight there for you. Yeah, it has to be 3 days, Deepak. Yes, you've got to get it 3 days. And what you'll note is, sometimes you might have got it down here, and sometimes you can have expansion like this. It can be going like this, you guys, like 3 days. I mean, it could be like 8 days over here, right? But it would pick it up over just these last 3 days. And that's why I said, if you're running a scan like this more frequently, you're more likely then, of course, to catch it earlier in the early stages of the phase, which is right there. You'd get the initial 3. Now, would it still show up later as long as it's been expanding? Yeah, it would also show up here. But if you're running it more frequently, you could get it here. Now, there is a way I could devise this script, actually, to say, only give me 3 days right after the crossover. but then again, you might be missing out on an extended run too. So it just kind of you kind of have to decide what you want to, have pulled up there. All right. Well, folks, hey, if you're finding this of value, you think it could be helpful for you, just do me a favor, smash that like button. It lets us know that you find this type of information useful each and every week. I know we talked about it in our Think Script class earlier this week, but you could. This is actually a way to find it. So sometimes it's helpful to know where to find them and find them quickly. But that's where the coding can really help. Be sure to subscribe as well. We're reaching kind of a milestone in subscriptions, and we'd love to have you on board if you're not already. Just subscribing to the Trader Talks class, which is right over here. Right there. Yeah. So here's the Trader Talks class. Yeah, I should say our channel. Love to have you subscribe. There'll be a subscribe right over here, and you can do that as well. In fact, I'll just hit a copy and paste. I know many of you are, but there it is. Actually, that shows the playlist. I think you can still subscribe over to the right. And yeah, if you missed it from earlier, I'll just put in that swing trade class earlier where we went into more detail on the MACD 2 line as well, if in fact you find it interesting. MACD, I'll just type it in here. Swing trade. There it is. Okay, everybody, have a fantastic rest of the day. It's been great being with you, and look forward to future discussions. See you next time.